that political lobbying they have huge.
Yeah, right.
Lobbying.
So what we want to do is create a timeline of the egregions that Monsanto has committed against our world. Sorry, Kristen. So I need about 30 people to line up in this fountain, and I'll hand out the timeline, and we'll stand in order as a visual for everyone to see. All right. So anybody that's interested, volunteers.
Thank you. And are you from New York?
Yeah, it's been a while.
You too. Are you volunteering?
I am volunteering.
Awesome.
All right, guys, are you gonna go through the timeline?
Yeah, I'm going to do it.
I'm sorry. In a word or a sentence, can I just ask you your thoughts of the company Monsanto?
It says it right here, bro. Read this.
Awesome.
All right,
Thanks,
so
man.
let's start
Sure.
it here.
I don't know what's in that stuff, and I don't give a damn. It may not be all natural, but it's in a pretty can. Pesticides, preservatives, nitrates in my hand. Living well with chemicals has civilized this land. I've got a little garden that keeps my butt alive. I douse it down with Roundup and use that 5-10-5. We spray for insects as soon as they arrive. Living well with chemicals, our new age has arrived. I don't know what's in that stuff, and I don't give a damn. It may not be all natural, but it's in a pretty can. Pesticides, preservatives, nitrates in my hand. Living well with chemicals has civilized this land. Now I make lots of money down at the factory, making up new compounds to benefit you and me. Now I don't mind smokestacks or breathing EDPs. Living well with chemicals has made this country free. I don't know what's in that stuff, and I don't give a damn. It may not be all natural, but it's in a pretty can. Pesticides, preservatives, nitrates in my hand. Living well with chemicals has civilized this land. I wake up in the morning with chemtrails in the sky. Heavy metals fill the air, don't stop and wonder why. They're trying to protect us, just not sure who they are. Living well with chemicals has got us here so far. I don't know what's in that stuff, and I don't give a damn. It may not be all natural, but the sunset sure is grand. They're keeping it a secret right before our eyes. Living well with chemicals until the day we die. I don't know what's in that stuff, and I don't give a damn. It's probably left over from good old Vietnam. They're keeping it a secret, just not sure who they are. 'Cause living well with chemicals has got us here so far.
Monsanto is an evil empire that wants to take over the entire food system of the world. And they're making good progress in Europe trying to stop them and control genetically engineered crops that are made by Monsanto. But in this country, we're going backwards with people like Tom Vilsack, who is just set to approve genetically modified Agent Orange ready corn, which is going to be like a Vietnam war over our farmlands. And He's already approved GMO alfalfa, which is really, really bad for organic farms. I myself grow organic roses and organic crops, and I use alfalfa. And where am I going to get alfalfa that's not contaminated? It's all going to be contaminated. Therefore, today we're here at the court on Pearl Street, hoping to support farmers who are finally trying to fight back against Monsanto and trying not to be sued for having their own crops contaminated. And, we hope they're successful.
I know Monsanto puts patents on life. They commodify seeds, which are, something that should be a commons. And they intimidate and sue farmers who get contaminated with their crops through no fault of their own. And that's why we're here. We're here to stand with the farmers who are fighting them.
We came in from Long Island this morning to reserve our right as Americans to choose what is in our foods and what isn't in our foods. Monsanto, to me, is just greedy.
I just know that they're probably one of the most unethical corporations in America. They do pretty much everything they can to hurt family farms, and they hound family farmers, and they've contaminated family seed. And I know they're involved in a lot of genetically modified crops, which I think is bad news for the public health. So that's...
They're agribusiness corporation, and they're trying to make seeds into property.
Well, I understand that it's made almost impossible for some of the indigenous people to keep their seeds, the seeds that they've been planting for centuries, because they become contaminated with with Monsanto products, and they won't reproduce, and then they have to buy their seeds from Monsanto, which they can't afford. And also, I understand that some of the seeds contain insecticides that are causing havoc with the whole ecology of the insects who pollinate the food that we need, and this also translates to the difficulty with that we're having the bats that are dying because they're ingesting these insects that have the insects that have eaten these seeds that have insecticides. So it's bringing down the whole system the whole environmental system, the whole web, the whole food web.
Monsanto is a huge monopoly.
I think they're truly evil incarnate.
Monsanto has patents on a lot of different seeds, GMO seeds.
Yeah, Monsanto's a big nasty beast that dominates our food system.
I don't know.
Less than 7% of the food that's consumed in the United States is organic. Less than 3% of the food that's consumed is even produced by local, renewable, community-supported agriculture or farmers markets. And so what we're still seeing is a market that largely is driven by an uninformed population that consumes this toxic junk in large quantities and is dying from various diseases that can be clearly traced to this toxic food legacy, right? And so really the issue is to start to switch from a society of consumers who are helping to support people like Monsanto, because today still the majority of the US population is totally comfortable with eating the foisted products of the corporatocracy and have no real options if they want to eat larger quantities of locally, responsibly, ethically produced food. And so really the issue is we start to reclaim our autonomy or reclaim the integrity of our national identity, which could arguably be said to be food. And the national identity of the American people has been stolen. It's been hijacked. And it's been hijacked by the corporatocracy, and they've done it very effectively, and they're here today in the courts to show us their ability to strong-arm the farmers of this country to have to roll over those few who are willing to resist and say the ethics of what Monsanto is doing is inherently immoral. Because the idea that anybody could file a suit against a farmer for things like pollen drifting in nature is completely irrational and insane if you understand how the natural world works and how evolution works. Because natural selection is something that we all have the opportunity to participate in. And what it means to reclaim our autonomy, our integrity, our national identity as a country, as a people, is to farm. And is to farm in ways that cooperate with evolution, not in ways that cooperate with technology, research administrations, and really an economy that is dominated by an agenda that has nothing to do with the health and well-being of the American people or with the health of the natural ecosystems that we depend upon. And those very essentials of our existence are what are at stake today when we talk about what is it that farmers are having to deal with when somebody like Monsanto takes them to court and files suit against them for participating in natural evolution.
Okay, over again.
The judgment that I make on this is that the judge had not yet gotten thoroughly into the documentation. She had a kind of a beginning view of what the issues were that we were claiming, and naturally perhaps seemed to be show some deference for the former Solicitor General of the United States, who Monsanto hired to be the lead attorney on their side. He was very confident, but when you try to get at the logic underneath his case, in my opinion, it is just smoke blown in the air without any real substance that you could hang your hat on or that you could take to the bank. And our attorney, on the other hand, on the one hand, was very good in citing the precedent that's important to standing in a case like this. But some of the things that I would like to have cited, like, for example, the fact that when I was building the plaintiffs, putting together the group of plaintiffs for this case, I talked to many, many farmers who had been contaminated and didn't want anybody to know about it. They would admit it confidentially to me, but they would not consider being a plaintiff in this case, simply because they know that if they admit that they've been contaminated, they're eligible to get sued for patent infringement.
And that's where the New York Times should be covering that part of the story.
Absolutely, no question.
Wow.
So, he made, Waxman made the point that nobody ever had been threatened or made fearful because of anything like this. And I know that that's absolutely untrue, because over and over again, and of course in this suit we couldn't have any plaintiffs in it that had been contaminated, simply because we knew that they could be sued for patent infringement because of the strict liability standard that makes it so that anybody who possesses their gene automatically can be sued for patent infringement, whether or not they intend or want to possess the gene. So that's what we're up against. That's what we contend is the real legal dispute in this, is that the law, the strict liability law, gives them leverage so that if, for example, a farmer who's been contaminated by a neighbor from a neighbor's transgenic crop gets that seed and gets that crop over onto his land, even in some cases a different crop. Here's what happens in those cases. There's a case in Australia that's going on right now where a farmer growing transgenic canola had the canola grow into the oats and wheat of the organic farmer, and the canola grew, the transgenic canola grew, and through the soil, bacteria and the fungus in the soil, that became transgenic, and it conveyed the transgenic traits into the organic crop, even though it was it wasn't, in other words, pollen, but it was another kind of spreading of contamination. So there's a lot of complexity to this that many people don't understand. If you have planted a transgenic crop and then harvested it and then come back and planted a different crop, you can convey the transgenic trait into that crop, and people are not testing for that. These things are
because it's nature. That's the way nature works.
That's right.
Soil.
And of course, what we don't know is what are we doing to the soil bacteria and all the soil culture that is important to survival. See, the food that we need to eat is the food that for millions of years our whole evolution has enabled us to know how to handle. And when you start messing around with the genes, it's not like, as I've said before, adding a mirror on the side of your car or putting a hat on your head. It turns off traits within the whole gene complex, so that, and you don't know, they haven't done studies. They do 90-day studies to push the crop into the market. They don't do 30-year studies to find out what are the long-term, independently examined issues that get caused from this whole system of agriculture. So these are the issues we will get into. This case today these arguments today just had to do with standing to bring the suit, and so the precedents related to that were important. But Waxman did make some points that I wish we might have answered a little better from practical knowledge of what is actually happening on the ground. And that's why I do feel like
he's not going to raise a point that you could really answer. He's going to raise points that you can answer.
You mean you're talking about the chief attorney for Monsanto?
Yeah, he'll
like you say, smoking.
Right.
Yeah.
They had 7 lawyers. I had thought they might have 10, but they had at least a half a dozen lawyers there in the courtroom, and to R2. But that's still not as bad as it was when Percy Smizer from Canada had his one lawyer against 19 of their lawyers.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a good chance of trials going forward?
Well, based on what I know about this judge and what I know about our arguments and my confidence that when you really look at the logic of the arguments and you're not swayed by impressive names and smoke, I feel pretty confident that we will achieve standing to bring our suit. I have less confidence about how the appeals court might determine. See, this case, we're bringing this case in part because I went to listen to Dan Ravisher talk at the University of Virginia about the case that he had won on a human gene patent. First time a human gene patent had been overturned. This is a case against a company called Myriad that had 2 genes patented that were related to a particularly aggressive kind of breast and ovarian cancer. And they were charging women $3,000 for testing for these genes when it cost them 10% of that to actually do the test. But because they patented it, they were charging much more. And also, the researchers couldn't get a hold of the genes to do research. So they, in the federal district court, right here, the same building, those patents were overturned. But then, the mixed decision from the appeals court, now both sides are appealing that to the Supreme Court, and hopefully some more sensible decision will come out of that, but I'm not confident about that either with this particular Supreme Court. So, you never know how it goes, but this is a first oar in the water, and hopefully we get a good decision from this court. We don't expect to even get to the substance of it until next winter, because they've got 2 more motions, pretrial motions that they want to bring. She makes her decision on this one in March, then they're going to come back with another pretrial motion for dismissal on different grounds. Not as important, not as significant, those grounds, but nonetheless that's coming up. That'll take some months. And then they're going to try to move it from here to St. Louis, because the courts are always have been friendly to them in St. Louis. So that's the next step. And then probably it will be next winter before we really get to the substance of the case. So that's what we're up against. And I'm feeling pretty good that we've got a reasonably good chance of actually having it work out.
Okay.
So, and thank you all for coming and supporting what we're trying to do.
Thank you.
People who are, we're so short term in this country. If we're not going to die tomorrow morning, people are not worried about it. But where the problem is exactly what you're asking, is what's happening because we're eating meat now that's fed transgenic grain, and we're eating chicken and even fish.
I want to go to Foley Square. There might be more press there.
Sure.
They might have left.
Old Monsanto rapes the farms, E-I-E-I-O. And on the farms they grow corn, E-I-E-I-O. Here corn, there corn, all transgene corn. So old Monsanto sells more Roundup, E-I-E-I-O. Old Monsanto wrecks the farms, E-I-E-I-O. And on these farms they grow soy, E-I-E-I-O. Here bean, there bean, all transgene beans, good for causing allergy, E-I-E-I-O. Old Monsanto abuses farms, E-I-E-I-O. Farms where they grow sugar beets, E-I-E-I-O. Here a beet, there a beet, all transgene beets, good for creating body fat, E-I-E-I-O. Old Monsanto dupes the farms, E-I-E-I-O. As they grow BT cotton, E-I-E-I-O. Here cotton, there cotton, all to kill the cotton, causing Indian suicides, E-I-E-I-O. Old Monsanto ruins farms, E-I-E-I-O. Where farmers grow canola, E-I-E-I-O. Here rapeseed, there rapeseed, transgene rapeseed, so canola became a weed, E-I-E-I-O. Old Monsanto bleeds the farms, E-I-E-I-O. Where farmers grow alfalfa, E-I-E-I-O. Here alfalfa, there alfalfa, all Roundup ready to help Monsanto kill more bees, E-I-E-I-O. Old Monsanto soaks the farms, E-I-E-I-O. Where farmers grow zucchini, E-I-E-I-O. Here a zook, there a zook, all transgene zook, sown to grow monopoly, E-I-E-I-O. Old Monsanto feeds the meat, E-I-E-I-O. Making livestock impotent, E-I-E-I-O. Cows infertile, pigs infertile, even fish infertile. Old Monsanto has raped the farms, E-I-E-I-O. Washington gave them patents, E-I-E-I-O. Forcing farms under contract, E-I-E-I-O. Here contract, there contract, abusive a contract. Old Monsanto abuses farms, E-I-E-I-O. On the farms, farmers are sued, E-I-E-I-O. Just to defend patent rights, E-I-E-I-O. Here a suit, there a suit, everywhere a lawsuit. So Monsanto gets royalties, E-I-E-I-O. Old Monsanto rakes in the cash, E-I-E-I-O. Watching company profits grow, E-I-E-I-O. Here cash, there cash, everywhere crass cash, cause old Monsanto owns the seeds, E-I-E-I-O. Old Monsanto corrupts genes, E-I-E-I-O. And from the farms, transgenes spread, E-I-E-I-O. Here genes, there genes, everywhere transgenes. So old Monsanto keeps control, E-I-E-I-O. Old Monsanto feeds the dairy, E-I-E-I-O. Putting milk at toxic risk, E-I-E-I-O. Here milk, there milk, all transgene milk, 'cause old Monsanto runs the farms, E-I-E-I-O. Old Monsanto ruins soil, E-I-E-I-O. With its seeds and glyphosate, E-I-E-I-O. Here a seed, there a seed, all transgenic seed to increase company share price, E-I-E-I-O. Everywhere their pollen goes, E-I-E-I-O. Old Monsanto gets control, E-I-E-I-O. Here pollen, there pollen, transgenic pollen, so old Monsanto can rape the farms, E-I-E-I-O. Old Monsanto rapes the farms, E-I-E-I-O. Growing bigger super weeds, E-I-E-I-O. Here a weed, there a weed, everywhere a weed, joining resistant insect pests, E-I-E-I-O. Labeled food is forbidden, E-I-E-I-O. Denying people informed consent, E-I-E-I-O. Here a gene, there a gene, everywhere transgenes, so Monsanto controls the food, E-I-E-I-O. Old Monsanto buys politicians, E-I-E-I-O. So to grow increasing power, E-I-E-I-O. Here power, there power, everywhere power, feeding their unending greed, E-I-E-I-O. Old Monsanto controls research, E-I-E-I-O. Under U.S. patent rights, E-I-E-I-O. Here a study, there a study, all phony studies. Old Monsanto has control, E-I-E-I-O. Old Monsanto runs ag schools, E-I-E-I-O. Through contracts and patent rights, E-I-E-I-O. Here patent, there contract, everywhere control, so Monsanto can rape more farms, E-I-E-I-O. No one can stand against them, E-I-E-I-O. USDA is in their pocket, E-I-E-I-O. Here money, there money, everywhere money, so Monsanto wrecks the farms, E-I-E-I-O. Old Monsanto bought Biologics, E-I-E-I-O. To end work they didn't like, E-I-E-I-O. Here bees die, there bees die, everywhere bees die, so how will food pollinate, E-I-E-I-O. Michael Taylor does their bidding, E-I-E-I-O. With FDA as his fiefdom, E-I-E-I-O. Here control, there control, everywhere control, 'cause old Monsanto owns the seeds, E-I-E-I-O. Old Monsanto brought Tom Vilsack, E-I-E-I-O. To promote coexistence, E-I-E-I-O. Here a seed, there a seed, all rapists, you see, so old Monsanto can own the food, E-I-E-I-O. Old Monsanto made farming easy, E-I-E-I-O. Selling their false promises, E-I-E-I-O. Here a promise, there a promise, all baloney, promise cutting only, short-term cause, E-I-E-I-O. Farmers bought Monsanto's plan, E-I-E-I-O. Needing no-till to survive, E-I-E-I-O. Here no-till, there no-till, everywhere no-till, so now we all pay the price, E-I-E-I-O.
But when I talk about food dictatorship, I am deeply aware of the fact that the corporations which have built their power on obsolete dinosaur science, genetic engineering, what could be more mechanistic than that? That there's an atom there's a gene, which is the atom of the plant, with a property. There's nothing like that. All genes relate to each other. Which genes will express in which way depend on the context they're in, the discipline of epigenetics, gene ecology, all kinds of new disciplines. Minute a good scientist does really good science on that stuff, and it happens to have an implication for a particular GMO, out is that scientist loses the job. And they've tried this again and again with Arpad Putsa, Ignacio Chapela, again and again. So I call this a knowledge dictatorship. But it can't last. I mean, Hitler tried it. His propagandist was called what? Yes, Goebbels tried it. Said just tell a lie 100 times and people will treat it as the truth. But eventually, I was in Washington on my way here, and they're having a big thing on in the Holocaust Museum, and big banner saying Nazi propaganda, history of Nazi propaganda. Now, this is in a way related to your question about, why do I have hope in future generations? I have hope in future generations for 3 reasons. One, in India, time is not linear. It doesn't carry on in the same way. Time is cyclical. Things pass. And that's why we have the idea of Kali, the goddess of time. This will pass. The dinosaurs will die. They might just take a little longer with a little bit more oppression. But they can't go on forever because you can't base an entire structure on falsehoods and dictatorship and expect it to last. Over time it collapses. For short times it works, but over time it collapses. I mean, look at him. The people, Mubarak never imagined he'd go. He's gone. And I always tell people, treat the Monsantos and the Cargills and the Walmarts as the Mubaraks of the food system. Both in terms of the strategies you evolve for dealing with them and in terms of the optimism you have that they will pass. And what is the future but future generations? So I'm part of a council called the World Future Council, very exciting work. And we've managed to get in the Rio +20 declaration a draft commitment, and we hope it'll get pushed and more governments will sign up for it. It's a call for a global commission for an ombudsman for the future. That there are, every crime against nature is a crime against the future. And these crimes must stop. In terms of the whole idea of the 2% farmers, I've done calculations on this. The first is, you can have a food system where 2% people are on the land, less than 2% on the land. 2% in the prisons, less than 2% on the land. There is a bigger population of people in prisons in America than on the land in America. But they are not the only ones moving the food system. Add the people driving Walmart's trucks up and down. Add the people working under slave conditions at the outlets in Walmart. Add the people who spray pesticides. Add the people who make pesticides. All of it. A rule of the thumb is no matter how you produce your food, 50% people have to be involved in the food system. Now, in ecological systems, a larger amount is linked to producing healthy food and circulating it locally and processing it locally. In the industrialized food system, a smaller amount shows up on the land, but larger amounts are in the food chain of downstream work. But all of that other work is destructive. It's destructive of the air and the atmosphere, the greenhouse gases. It's destructive of water bodies. It's destructive of all the externalities that an industrial system has. But the most important point is we are not short of people on this planet. And because we are not short of people on this planet, another element of that dinosaur thinking is to continue to work on productivity as if only labor productivity matters. Productivity is output per unit input. Output means everything we produce. Input means everything we put in. What are the inputs that are never counted? The fossil fuels, the water, the energy. This system of 2% farmers is based on 300 energy slaves behind every person. That's what industrialization is, fossil fuels. But in addition to that, it is a system that uses 10 units of input to produce 1 unit of food. So it's falsely efficient because it's measuring efficiency with respect to labor as if labor was a limiting factor.
My knowledge of Monsanto varies around a few different things. Certainly their history is a creator of many toxic chemicals throughout the 60s and 70s, from Agent Orange to other defoliating chemicals. They have since tried to figure out how to make defoliating chemicals something that's profitable. Their biggest, most recent thing is glyphosate. And they've ultimately then tried to figure out a way to make foods that could be grown that would be resistant to their defoliating chemical. And they have tried to make it a positive thing by saying farmers can grow crops like corn that have this glyphosate gene, glyphosate-resistant gene, and not have to apply other chemicals. And certainly the other chemicals were bad. But ubiquitous use of glyphosate is no better. And there are real issues with glyphosate in water and others. They now are also trying to patent many, many genes of various bacteria into plants that also then act as a pest or pesticide against some of the bugs that go after some of the foods that we grow. One of the many problems I have with what Monsanto does is over time they've been buying up seeds and seed varieties and are now primary controllers of a huge percentage of the seed supply in the United States and frankly around the world. And to me, food and water are two of our most important aspects of what we are as human beings. I mean, there's really no denying that. And to have corporate control of a vast swath of our food supply and the seed supply of our food supply is very scary to me. And it's related to the whole general corporate control that seems to be taking over not only our country, but much of the world, regardless of whether it's clothing, food, you name it. And so that's what I know about Monsanto. They're a huge company. Money is their bottom line. They couch their goals as being sort of globally good in terms of, quote, feeding the world. But frankly, there are plenty of statistics that show that those of us that grow organic food and sustainably grow food actually can get as much or more yield out of the same ground over time as many of these chemical-induced crops. And the diversity is extremely important from a biological perspective, soil health perspective, and wildlife perspective. And we're losing that because of the systems that Monsanto is propagating upon us.
Well, I know that they were a company that manufactured Agent Orange during the Vietnam War, and that was a very, very deadly herbicide that was just sprayed almost indiscriminately on that country, and the effects of that have remained in the lungs and bodies of a large number of our veterans from that war. They now bill themselves as a life company, but what they have really been about is the process of genetically engineering life forms and then acquiring patents on those life forms. And I'm a person who happens to spend a lot of time studying the evolution of the universe and Earth out of that process, and life and human consciousness as one single process. And I feel that anyone who, simply because they know how to go in and disturb and rearrange the genetic memory of an organism, that anyone who thinks that they have the right to do that is just totally a violation of the inherent dignity and integrity of the universe and of Earth and of life itself.
They've managed through their, what I say is erroneous patent system in the U.S. initially, causing them to have patents on life forms that they should never have had. And by doing that, they get control of the seed supply, and they use their Roundup herbicide to make profits. And they spin that to say this is what's going to feed the world, and that's what they're doing is changing fundamentally the way agriculture is done, and in an unsustainable way.
They're enormous corporations. I know that over 100,000 cotton farmers in India have committed suicide because of Monsanto's practices in dealing with them. I know that they have released genetically engineered alfalfa, which we feel threatened by because we have alfalfa on our farms. I know that they're releasing GE vegetable seeds soon, or some already have been. I know that they troll around saying who has grown their seed by contract and who has not, who might accidentally have their seed by genetic trespass.
My wife and I and our daughter came down as plaintiffs in the suit. We are one of the individual farms that are listed as plaintiffs in the suit. We don't actually grow seed at this point in time. However, we definitely have the potential for impact from genetic drift in the marketability of our product. Many people don't know the full understandings of organic or not and the rules, and regardless of whether we would keep our organic certification, our ability to sell our product, if it becomes cross-pollinated with genetic material from Monsanto, would greatly diminish, and we would lose market share, but also we would be at risk of Monsanto saying you are now using or holding or in possession of their patented material. We have a farm next to us that is a conventional dairy farm. They grow genetically modified corn, and we have to adjust where we plant our crops and sometimes take land out of production if it's too close to those areas. And so part of today's lawsuit is around how farms are having to change our practices for Monsanto's patented product, both for our own liability protection, but also for our marketability.
They're very abusive with respect to their GE patents, and the Monsanto technical agreement is very onerous on the growers, and the grower has signed away a lot of his rights if they sign that agreement, and they have been parties to some pretty abusive practices with respect to their GE crops, and they contaminate conventional crops that are in the same neighborhood.
In my personal opinion, Monsanto seems to be one of the world's most powerful corporations that exerts a tremendous and really undue influence on both government in a regulatory sense, on other governments in their ability to set public policies for their own people in the best and highest sense, and it certainly exerts a huge effect and an undue influence on land-grant universities in this country as well. So when one company controls so much of the world's seed supply, there's a potential for really undue influence in every manner. I think they exert undue influence on farmers, and certainly as a co-plaintiff in this lawsuit, the ability that organic farmers and seed producers need to be live in fear of being taken to court by a company when they've never signed a licensing agreement, when they've done everything they possibly could to avoid the technology, when the patent holder themselves escapes all liability from anything, I think is somewhat unethical, unjust, immoral, and legally perverse.
Well, I think they are very smooth in their argument that they haven't gone after individuals that have inadvertently, gotten their pollen into the farm's crops. However, there are a number of farmers that we know who have been contaminated but have not joined this lawsuit because they're afraid that if they did, they would say, by the way, we ended up with Monsanto's patent. And therefore, they'd be exposing themselves to Monsanto or other seed genetic modifying companies. And so they're not coming forward. So it's a real catch-22. If a farm has been cross-pollinated, they don't want a lot of people to know, both from the Monsanto legal perspective or from a market share perspective. And so all of the people that are most at risk for this scenario have to be the quietest. And that's a really difficult conundrum because when you want to go to court to bring up these issues, the courts want to say, well, is this an issue? You have no farmer that's been cross-pollinated. Well, no farmer that's been cross-pollinated wants to tell Monsanto that they've had their gene. So that's a big issue. And ultimately with patent law, what's really fascinating and different about genetic patents, and particularly genetic patents with food, is that normally you patent a type of paperclip. And people can choose to buy and use paper clips or not, because they could use a staple instead. They could rip and fold the corners. There's lots of ways you can hold paper together. We all eat food. So we are now in a new era of the ability for companies to genetically own our food supply. And that, to me, is one of the scariest aspects of Monsanto, of transgenic trespass. And that's part of what this discussion is about. It's a bigger topic, but specifically, if people are patenting food, then they're patenting ownership and control of our ability to live. And that's a very different world.
I don't care if there's corporate personhood. No corporation should have a greater right than an individual to sustain themselves in their life. That was a huge error that life, or any kind of life form, including plants and seeds, could ever be patented.
All of their promises to feed the world have fallen short. The promises that they made of genetic engineering have fallen short. And now, of course, now that there's Roundup Ready resistance and herbicide-resistant weeds, they are now attempting to stack 2,4-D, a much more toxic and persistent herbicide, on top of genetic engineered seeds, which will only cause more and more toxic pesticides to be applied to more and more ground, and of course, herbicide-resistant seeds. From an organic farmer standpoint, the whole concept of BT resistance is one of grave concern, and it should be a concern for not only organic farmers but conventional farmers as well, who have utilized a very natural pesticide in very strict terms and under judicious use, that inserting a BT into every cell of a plant will cause resistance to that as well.
The genetic diversity of the gene pool is going to be reduced with the contamination because of this lack of controllability. It's repeating the experiment of the potato famine in the 1850s in Europe and in Scandinavia in 1900, when you have less diverse species. That's what caused the potato famine. There's four varieties, all susceptible to potato blight. And as we reduce the gene pool, if we let this happen, it's going to happen here too.
In Europe, there's a greater sense of culture and ethic and community mindedness, and in this country we're so individualistic and we're so sold on commercialism and being an individual that we've lost track of that community aspect, and we don't really know our roots. We don't really know where we're from. In some ways, the experiment of sort of global homogeneity in the United States is, of course, one of the best experiments in the world. On the other hand, it's made it so that we've lost some of that community spirit. And when you have community, you spend time around meals, and you spend time around life with others, and food is a much bigger part, I think, of measure of the culture in many other countries. And it's not just the eating of the food, but it's knowing where the food comes from. And we just don't talk about where our food comes from in this country to the level that those countries. And I don't know entirely why.
Well, I know that they do not label their products as genetically engineered, which always puzzled me because I've seen in literature that they are very proud of their products. So it puzzles me that they don't want to label their products where they appear in the market. And one would think that if they were really above board and wanted people to buy their products because they think they're so great and because of the very characteristic that they're genetically engineered, one would think that they would label them.
There's limited test data concerning the presence of the Roundup Ready glyphosate in the feed food chain that ends up in our meat and milk and eggs. There's some data out there that we need to verify that's troubling, because this is not a nutrient. This is not healthy. And this monopoly question, should we allow a company to acquire control of the seed stock and the gene pool through the GE process? And that's what Monsanto clearly is trying to do. And I don't think we should.
Well, just overall, I think people thankfully are starting to pay more attention to their food, and it's a long learning process, and I'm still learning. I've been growing food for 15, 18 years. We will learn for our whole lifetime, but what we put in our bodies is the most critical thing. And so if you're paying attention to this, just keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep opening our minds, and try and eat and drink with your dollar as healthy as you can.
What do I know about Monsanto? Major chemical company, multinational corporation, I believe, but I really don't know a lot specifically about what they do and the products that they put in there.
It sounds like a corporation, but I don't know what they do.
Yeah, I've not heard of it.
I really know that they're a chemical company, and that's about it.
Monsanto? Never heard of it before.
It sounds like a cheese tool, but it's probably not. I'm sorry.
What is Monsanto?
What is that?
They genetically engineered seed to be Roundup resistant. And they're finding out that the Roundup isn't working anymore on some of the weeds. So that's what I know about Monsanto.
Oh, nothing at all. I'm not from around here, from Sweden.
Monsanto. Nothing. Sounds like a preservative. I know nothing about Monsanto. You know, wait a minute. Monsanto. I read something about Monsanto, I know, not too long ago, but I can't remember what it was about. It was, I don't remember. I've heard it. I have.
I know of Monsanto carpet mills. I know of a fabrication company called Monsanto, not a great deal more.
Well, I know Monsanto produces genetically modified corn, and I understand that it's helping third world nations to grow corn without using pesticide, and that's what I think.
I know nothing about Monsanto.
We watch Food
Yeah,
Inc.
Food Inc, sure.
We never read much about it.
A huge conglomerate that is a market that has cornered the market on
Soybeans. They kind of bullied the soybean farmers.
Right.
About what we know.
That's it.
Oh, I hate Monsanto. They create genetically modified corn, for example, that cannot, they basically force the farmers who use that to always use that. Now, let me put it this way. I know that what they're doing is not good for the earth, that they're only looking in for the profit, and it's not good for the farmers, it's not good for our health.
Monsanto. I know.
Go ahead. Pineapple.
Yeah, they advertise on Sunday morning talk shows.
Yeah.
They do.
I know an individual by the name Monsanto. But is it a pineapple or?
No, it's a company.
It's a company?
No. I mean, they make pineapple. They can pineapples, I think. That's all I got.
I know that I see a lot of people objecting to practices, and that I keep thinking, I need to click on that and read it, and I haven't done it yet.
So.
What I know about Monsanto is that I used to own stock, and they have genetic engineered food, which I'm very much in favor of. And as far as I know, it's a company like all other companies. They try to make money, but I think they're probably a reasonable American company. That's it.
Well, Monsanto is something I've commented on Facebook a lot, and actually just coming out of the subway here, we noticed that there was an ad for Monsanto, and it had a farmer that said, I produce, what did it say? Something about safe food. And then it said Monsanto. So I took a picture of it because I was so enraged because it's so false, because Monsanto is so responsible for bioengineering, genetically engineered food and stuff that I'm very much opposed to. So, and you? Did you know about
No,
them?
she said whatever I wanted to say. Everything she wanted to say.
I've heard of Monsanto. Don't know a whole lot about Monsanto. I'm pretty sure they're a large seed company that is the provider for a lot of the farmers in the United States. And should I go on? There's more that I know about Monsanto. Let's see, what else do I know? I believe that they genetically engineer certain types of seeds to grow, and that a lot of the farmers in the country are totally dependent on them now because they are the only provider of the seeds that are resistant to certain pests or other problems for plants, other things that destroy crops.
I know that they have been experimenting increasingly with genetically modified seeds, foods in general. They are, I'll use the term polluting farmers' crops with genetically engineered seed. And then, if I'm not mistaken, they're actually trying to sue these farmers basically for infringement of their patents or copyrights.
Monsanto? I don't know anything about Monsanto. It sounds like some type of rice product, perhaps? Monsanto. I mean, it could be it comes from a foreign country and it's been imported into America, rice product, or possibly, I don't know, it's maybe something that you make like some Mexican type dishes with, like the grains. I don't know. Monsanto. Anything else? I don't know anything about it. Sorry.
It's a chemical company. I don't know they have any involvement. All I know is I think polymers when I think of Monsanto. Big company, old company, I think. That's all.
It's a company that creates I don't think they have the greatest reputation, right? At least from my friends, they don't have the greatest reputation. So I believe that they're a company that makes foods that, I can't remember. It's terrible. I forgot.
Monsanto? I don't know anything about it.
Oh, nothing? I don't even know what that is.
Monsanto. No clue. I'm so sorry.
Monsanto, it's a food company. And I think they create genetically modified foods. That's what I know. I don't know if that's right, but no, that's what I know. And you have to be really careful about the amount of genetically modified food that you're eating because it's probably not good for you.
Oh, nothing about Monsanto. Don't know anything about that. So, can you give me a hint?
Or they do the genetic engineering for like seeds, for instance, and they also provide seeds to farmers.
I never heard of Monsanto.
Monsanto, when it comes to food and health, nothing. Monsanto used to be sponsor a race car, Mindy 500. That's it, Japanese.
Is food? Is it food?
Never see that.
Monsanto is a company that makes, I think, bug stuff for different crops and things. There was a big law case against them like many years ago because I went to law school and we studied it. So that's what I know about the company. They do some type of pesticide stuff and it's related to food. At least it used to be. I don't know if they still are.
Monsanto? Know nothing about Monsanto, actually. I have no clue what that is.
Monsanto is a chemical company. Period. That's it. Total knowledge.
Monsanto? Absolutely nothing. I've never heard of it.
Monsanto?
Monsanto. I don't know anything.
Don't know anything about it.
Don't know. No.
Monsanto? I know nothing about Monsanto. I've never heard of it, actually.
Well, I know a lot about Monsanto. I'm actually a union organizer that organized a lot of chemical workers over the years, so I know that their products have an incredible impact on human health, and I am deeply suspicious of the genetically modified products that they're now marketing and the impact that they'll have on the food chain and on human well-being and health, as well as on the workers who are actually engaged in manufacturing and distributing and using those products.
Well, I understand that they're involved a lot in the genetically modified crops, and it seems to me that a lot of stuff goes into our food and we're not aware of it because there are no labeling instructions requiring companies to let us know when their food has been modified.
What do I know about Monsanto in relation to food and health? I don't know anything about Monsanto in relation to food and health. They're a big company, but I associate their name with products, not packaged goods, not food or nutrition. I don't know anything about them.
Probably not enough, but I am, if anything, biased against Monsanto. So if it's something that Monsanto did, my tendency would be to certainly not eat whatever the product is. Monsanto is a huge corporation that owns the vast majority of genetically modified seed and has patented all that and is in many ways contaminating the world's seed bank as those seeds are spread. I know, for instance, in Mexico, there are unique corn breeds that are developed even for a hillside, where the climate's slightly different than the other side of a hill, be it sun or moisture or something. And these corn corn breeds go back hundreds, if not even 1,000 years or more, potentially. And Mexico, last I checked, had a federal national prohibition on genetically modified seeds being introduced into the country and planted. And I guess that should be confirmed. But bottom line, because people have bought the corn ears that were grown from genetically modified seeds, some or most of which probably could trace back to Monsanto, those seeds, when the corn is kept dried and then planted by Mexican farmers, is introduced into the Mexican seed bank, basically, and it's affected some species that are hundreds of, or not species, but breeds of corn that are hundreds of years old, uniquely bred for little parts of, I know this most about southern Mexico, Oaxaca, which is the next to the most southern state of Mexico. So that's a little detail. Bottom line is, it's a huge agribusiness. It's about things like Roundup Ready crops that are tolerant of pretty nasty pesticides. It's the utter opposite of the kind of food that's served in the restaurant behind us, which I believe is the world's first organic restaurant. The owner, Nora, works very closely with local farmers. In particular, a guy named Jim Crawford from Pennsylvania, who has a farm called New Morning Farm and has built a cooperative that supports his farm and many other farms that try to do things carefully and organically. And a good portion of what's served at Nora comes from those farms, which is not Monsanto. I could talk on endlessly, but basically, Monsanto, to my understanding, is a chemical company that ensures future sales of its pesticides and other agricultural chemicals by making farmers dependent on those chemicals by locking them into genetically modified seeds and crops, which have questionable nutritional value, certainly calories. But anyway, I don't know. Does that begin to answer your question?
I know they're the first. We're the first company to genetically engineer corn, and now I believe they genetically engineer almost all grains, although I'm not sure. Good.
Oh, they're the bad guys. That's what I know, or what I've heard, that they have all the seeds and that they're pretty dominant in the market and that they try to get all their seeds into the third world and developing markets and trying to make the third world countries dependent on their products.
Or the farmers.
The farmers,
they
yes.
make the farmers dependent of their genetic modified food. Seed.
Seed and food.
Seed, yeah.
Monsanto, yes.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, Monsanto is, in my opinion, destroying everything. I think it's a horrible company, and they should just go somewhere else. Go to hell, for example.
I pretty much have the same opinion because I do believe in eating healthy and choice and organic and everything that's good for you. And to me, Monsanto does everything opposing, the opposite of this. So
it is. It's a horrible company.
Monsanto. Never heard of it.
No, never.
No. What is it?
Well, what I know about Monsanto is it is probably the greatest danger to civilization that mankind has ever known. They are actually poisoning our food. They are certainly poisoning our minds with their radical beliefs in changing the very essence of our food system and actually the basics of our food system. I think it's astonishing that the American public are not more outraged by the insanity of what's going on. Aside from that, I have no opinion.
About Monsanto, with the engineered corn and chemically produced hybrids. That's about all I know. I don't know if it's negative or positive. It doesn't sound like it would be good. But if it's a stronger product and it's not harmful to humans or cattle or anybody else is going to eat it, times are changing, and I guess you have to keep up with whatever's going to grow and sell.
Know nothing about Monsanto. I haven't heard the name, and I don't know what it is, unfortunately.
Nothing at all.
Okay.
What is it?
Monsanto is the one with the green giant, right? Or no, that's another one.
I don't know it.
Don't know.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Monsanto, I don't really know much about it.
I don't know anything about Monsanto.
I don't know anything about that.
Monsanto? I don't live in New Jersey, I'm in New York. Is that a politician or is it a wine?
It's a chemical company. They make probably thousands of products, fertilizer and pesticides, herbicides, lots of other things, I'm sure. It's huge.
Monsanto. I never heard of it. I never heard of Monsanto.
I've never heard of Monsanto before.
Isn't it a drug company, I think? It's some type of company, that's all I know about it.
It's a large chemical company, isn't it? I think it's a chemical company. I think they're maybe also into modified food or seeds and things like that. I'm not quite sure.
Nothing.
Oh gosh, Monsanto products. I'm trying to think of what they even make. Is it like olive oil or I'm not sure.
Not much. Monsanto. When I think Monsanto, I don't know, for some reason I'm thinking rugs.
I don't know anything about Monsanto.
Well, in nutrition class, we watched a documentary. I'm not sure what it's called, but I know that it's like sort of a monopoly kind of thing that's taking over the food industry. I don't know. That's really all I got out of it.
I don't know anything about it. So,
I don't know. That's all I really know.
Well, I know that it is one of the big 4 food corporations, and that they oftentimes are really predatory towards small farmers because they have patents on especially genetically modified foods. They started out, I think, in soybean industry. I'm not sure. A lot of the people that work for Monsanto, I do know, are former FDA executives or former political lobbyists for things like corn and soy. And that's pretty much it.
Nothing. Monsanto. I know nothing about Monsanto. Honestly.
Nothing. Monsanto, I know nothing about it.
That I hate them. They're evil.
Nothing.
They have a monopoly over soy, and I don't know all the details, but what I've heard is that they just control all the soy seed.
Never heard of it.
I know that they use genetically modified seeds and grains that you have to buy herbicides for that help get rid of weeds, but they're indigestible in the system. For instance, my daughter, she has a severe soy allergy, and anytime she comes into contact with Monsanto soy, she has severe digestive disturbances.
Nothing good. From all I've heard, that they provide a lot of chemicals or genetically modified stuff that's really destroying a lot of our natural foods.
What do I know about Monsanto? I don't know anything about Monsanto.
Nothing.
I know they're a pretty, I don't know if evil is the word, but they're a pretty aggravating corporation in terms of their disregard for just people in general, you know, and I know about this whole GMO thing, you know, they're basically a driving force behind very reckless GMO, you know, integration into our agricultural society. I'm not opposed to GMO so much. It's just the way we handle it. You know, it's all about pumping out, you know, more pesticides, things that last longer, things that are a little unnatural as opposed to being healthy. And they're a big force behind that. And there's this whole thing about them suing people over genes or plants or something too. I don't really know the particulars, but I know I don't like them.
I just feel that Monsanto should label their products so that if there's genetically engineered ingredients in their products, that people can make a choice whether they want that or not.
They are modifying food, the genetically modifying food. And I know I don't like what I hear about them. I don't know the details, but I know they're messing with our food sources. And some of those seeds that they modify end up sort of crossbreeding with other seeds so that you eventually everybody gets the modified food, even if you try to not use the modified seeds. So I think it's a disaster.
My wife thinks it's very bad.
Oh, Monsanto should go to jail. And I don't understand why Americans allow all these genetically modified food to actually be here. In Europe, we don't have it. Sue the guy.
Well, what I've read about Monsanto and heard from different people is all the genetic modification they're doing on food and everything, which is ruining the food industry, ruining our health and everything else. So, and it looks like they've just kind of monopolized the food industry and doing whatever they want to do. That's what I've heard about them, and I've read a lot of articles. I know a lot of farmers, and it's nothing that's going to benefit us in the future for our health.
I know absolutely nothing about Monsanto.
Monsanto? I know nothing about that.
I know a few very vague things, and I know that there are a lot of farmers suing Monsanto for, let's see if I can get this right. Monsanto is suing farmers, right, for using grains that they say they developed and have patented, but the grains have kind of migrated onto the farmers' fields, and maybe the farmers are countersuing for something. I don't know. But they control a lot. They developed Roundup, which has messed up everything.
No sé muy bien cuál compañía es la que me está preguntando.
Well, Monsanto is one of the most reviled companies in the entire world. They have a history of devastation going way back to their very first products. They're most well known for participating in the Vietnam War by manufacturing Agent Orange for the U.S. Army. Agent Orange parts of Agent Orange are still being manufactured and used in farming today, which I think would be surprising to most members of the public to think that the food we eat actually has chemicals on it that were used in Agent Orange. That chemical is 2,4-D, and sadly, you know, as long as we've known that it causes cancer, leukemia, obviously the veterans and the people of Vietnam have suffered a great deal by their exposure to Agent Orange. Sadly, we are still continuing to use this chemical and may jack up the use of this chemical 50-fold if we start growing crops that are genetically engineered to withstand unlimited amounts of 2,4-D. That's another thing about Monsanto. People, you know, they do a lot of advertising to make people believe that they're an agricultural company, that their interest is in helping farmers, their interest is in feeding the world. But Monsanto's main interest is in selling pesticides. They have come up with an ingenious, evil strategy to sell pesticides by engineering crops to withstand them. And then they market them to farmers saying, here you go, here's a wonderful crop, and you can use weed control strategies that are a blanket strategy. You can pour as much Roundup or as much 2,4-D over this crop as you want. The weeds will die and the crop will live. And so, that was initially somewhat attractive to very large-scale farmers growing single crops. But we've seen very quickly, and it's only been since the mid-1990s that we've been using these genetically engineered herbicide-resistant crops, that the technology is a failure. It doesn't work because the catch is that the way that it's been genetically engineered is with the bacteria. The bacteria enables the plant to be resistant to the herbicide. But bacteria are constantly transferring between plants and the soil and the weeds. And the weeds have now taken up the trait that this genetically engineered crop has that enables it to be resistant to the herbicides. So Monsanto's technology was built to fail, and it may in fact be part of their business model, because as a company interested in selling chemicals, they want to sell as much Roundup as they can. But if the farmers find that the weeds are resistant to the Roundup, then they can sell additional chemicals to the farmers. And reading the farm press, you'll see that this is a constantly covered issue in the farm press. Farmers are extremely concerned about. This is one of the things that makes farming expensive. Farmers are spending up to $35 an acre, last time I checked in the farm press, on weed control because of this problem of herbicide-resistant weeds, a problem that was created by genetic engineering, created by Monsanto.
This is the whole basis of the system of agriculture that this nation operates under, the no-till system of agriculture. It's the basis of the so-called Green Revolution. But it's nonsense, because they knew since glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup, was discovered originally in the 60s, that it was a powerful chelator. And they've always told us, if you use this, don't worry about it, it dissipates in the ground and there's no problem. So it's done, after it's done its job, it's no danger. That's also nonsense. When this product, Roundup or glyphosate, the active ingredient, gets in the ground, it binds with the minerals in the soil, the major minerals that we need in the plants to protect the plant health and immune system, and also is needed by the people to protect their health and immune system. So here we are with a system of agriculture now which is increasingly using this herbicide, dependent on it. 75% or so of all the corn grown in the United States is transgenic. 90% of the soybeans in the United States are transgenic. Canola, cotton, now alfalfa, sugar beets. So it's in those products. If you're eating sugar from sugar beets, if you're eating corn sweetener, you're getting exposed to transgenics. And not only do they have now genes resistant to the Roundup herbicide, but they also have put in genes that are pesticides in and of themselves. So that you've got a Bt gene that goes into corn and other products, and they've found that is showing up in people. They said, don't worry about it, it will be killed and rendered harmless in the digestive tract. Not true.
One thing that I've been pondering recently is the news that came out within the last year. Canadian scientists took blood tests of women of reproductive age and women who were pregnant and looked for Monsanto's toxins in their blood and found that 9 out of 10 women who are pregnant or of reproductive age have Monsanto's Bt toxin in their blood. And in fact, their babies as well, their newborn babies, have Monsanto's toxin in their blood. 9 out of 10 women, 8 out of 10 babies have Monsanto's toxin in their blood. I'm 5 months pregnant, so hearing these things, in my state really gives me a new window on what it means to have these chemical companies manufacturing products for the farmers and products that end up in our food. It's actually quite alarming that BT would be what ends up in our body. BT is something that Monsanto genetically engineered crops to produce. So I've talked to you about Monsanto's business model of manufacturing crops that withstand pesticides so they can sell the farmers unlimited pesticides. And when those pesticides fail to work on the weeds because the weeds have resistance, then they can sell them additional pesticides for weed control. They also came up with a business model where they genetically engineered crops to produce an insecticide. BT is an insecticide. BT is a relatively ecologically friendly pest or insecticide. It's used by organic farmers on occasion. It's allowed in organic, but that's BT in its natural form. And again, BT is it's a bacteria found in the soil. And of course, when you engineer it, you're changing its quality. And when you engineer it and attach it to a crop and make this crop produce a bacteria, then it's a whole different can of worms. This is the BT that is produced by Monsanto's corn and cotton. It's a very different thing than the BT that farmers use when they're using, the natural form of it for weed control, for insect control. So to have an engineered toxin in your body is much different than to be exposed to the natural form of BT. And what scientists have found about human exposure to Monsanto's engineered BT through our diet is that this engineered form of BT is actually toxic to human cells. It kills human cells, especially the liver and kidney cells. I guess those are the cells in our body that are our first line of defense in our immune system. So those would be the cells of the body that would be attacked and killed first. But to know that, basically, I guess everybody in North America who eats a typical North American diet, we've all already been exposed to this toxin. We already have it from our diet in our bodies, and our babies are being born with it. And we know that it is lethal to human cells. So that's quite disturbing. And it's also, considering that these BT crops, the crops are mostly corn and cotton. And while we do have field corn and cotton in our diet, surprisingly, a Ritz cracker has a considerable amount of trans fats that come from cottonseed oil. So most Americans probably wouldn't be considering the fact that they're actually eating cotton. They think that they are wearing cotton, but we're eating cotton too.
And we're now getting studies from Europe, because we don't do these studies in this country because of the patent ownership issue. Now we're getting studies from France, other European countries, Russia, that show multi-generational genetic impacts that we know them anecdotally in this country from farmers who can see what's happening to their cattle or their other livestock, hogs, so forth, but we don't have studies. And as you probably are aware, if you don't have a study, anecdotal information in the political world and in the academic world doesn't have credibility. If I hear a lot of anecdotal studies from a lot of farmers, I listen to it, but they don't. They don't accept anything that doesn't have some kind of large academic credibility.
The scientists wondered on the issue of where this toxin is coming from, how it's getting into our bodies, and they assume that it's mostly through eating animal products, eating the meat, milk, and dairy of animals that have been fed BT crops. And most farm animals, factory farmed animals, but that's where most farm animals are in our food system, is in factory farms. They're almost all eating a diet of corn and soy. And it doesn't matter if they're a cow or a chicken or a pig, they're basically all fed the same diet. And the corn is BT, so they get a certain amount of that corn. We eat the animal or the animal's eggs or milk, and we get the genetically engineered toxin secondhand that way. So even at a point where we're only eating relatively minor ingredients that are genetically engineered, or we're only eating animals that have been fed genetically engineered crops, the engineered toxins are in our systems already. So we should be very wary of Monsanto's efforts to genetically engineer vegetables, to genetically engineered grains like wheat that we eat a considerably greater amount of. And so I think obviously we need to stop this experiment in its tracks. We're already contaminated with toxins lethal to human cells. That's certainly a bad thing. Most countries are examining this evidence and saying, stop. France banned BT corn when they learned the fact that it's lethal to human kidney and liver cells. And they're seeking a European-wide ban on BT crops as we speak. Monsanto, ever the salesman, has been fighting the French ban, but it was reinstated recently. So, Monsanto, even in the face of evidence that countries are considering that their products are toxic to human beings, Monsanto continues to fight for these markets. And they're not getting enough resistance in the United States, in my opinion. We need to work much harder to make people aware of what's going on with Monsanto's crops.
And we know now from lawsuits that have been able to go into the FDA records and look at discovery, we know now that when Dan Quayle in 1992 declared that transgenic food was generally recognized as safe, GRAS, that at that time the scientists in the FDA did not agree with that position, that they realized then that there were toxicity issues, allergy issues, and they didn't know what all beyond that needed to be investigated. So going back that far, they just papered it over. And at that time, the deputy director of the FDA was a man named Michael Taylor, who had been an attorney at King and Spalding, the law firm Monsanto used, and he was Monsanto's attorney at King and Spalding. Handpicked and placed into that job at that time, particularly to facilitate the approval of bovine growth hormone, which was a Monsanto product. So that was facilitated, and transgenic seeds were also facilitated as part of this process with Michael Taylor, who came back to handle the same job in the Obama administration, none other but the very same Michael Taylor, now presiding over the release of a half a dozen or so crops last year and more in the pipeline. So we've got these kinds of issues. You notice I'm using the term transgenic. I like to use that term because I do not like the term GMO or genetically engineered genetic engineering. I prefer a term that I think is, first of all, more scientific, and second of all, points more directly at what's really going on. Now, the lawsuit. Not only is this lawsuit created to protect those farmers who are the plaintiffs in the lawsuit, the 83 of us that are involved, which are 33 farms and farmers, 14 seed companies, including here in Virginia, Southern Exposure Seed Exchange, and in Waynesboro, Countryside Organics is also our plaintiff in our case. Myself and those two others are the Virginia plaintiffs. The others are from all across the United States and Canada. 36 organizations are represented, and among those organizations are somewhere close to a third to maybe a half of all organic farmers in the United States. There's around 14,500 organic farmers in the United States, but there are 2 million total farmers. So you can see that the total population of organic farmers is a tiny, tiny fraction of the total number of farmers in the full nation. So in the first instance, what we're saying in this lawsuit is we want protection so that if we get accidentally contaminated by Monsanto's genes, that they will not come and sue us for patent infringement. It sounds crazy, but under U.S. patent law, there's a strict liability standard. It doesn't matter why or how you got possession of their genes. As long as you're in possession of their genes, then they can sue you for patent infringement and take everything you own and wipe you out.
Formal conversation, but what can we do or to help the lawsuit? What would you suggest? The movement in general, but your specific lawsuit.
What we need to do is to raise the consciousness of the people about the issues that we've been discussing here. That's the issue. We have to get people aware of what's going on in detail. And there are handout materials here that I have, and there is, I think that you have that one that's 10 things that people can do. That list of 10 things that people can do when they're just out in a restaurant, in a grocery store. Ask the grocery store, is there any transgenic ingredients in this product? Make it clear that you don't want to buy it if it has any of those ingredients. 75% or more now of all the processed food in the conventional grocery store has transgenic content in it. So and we don't know what restaurant food may have. Ask in restaurants, is there any? There was a food summit here, food safety and security summit at the University of Virginia a few months ago, and Chipotle was there, and they were talking about all of their good practices with beef. And I asked them, well, are you doing anything with your growers to make sure that they're not using any transgenics in their beef? And he was perfectly sympathetic to the issue, but his answer was no, not yet. Now I hope that as a result of the conversation with him, that maybe some people like that will begin to get conscious and start to see that things are changed. And we don't know how these things affect us. All we know is that we need those studies and we don't have them. I'm just pointing out the directions of the things that we do know already and how the health impacts of it are. And if you sign this list here, we can pass this around. And if you've signed up to that, I will send you some links and some handout materials that go well beyond what's on the table here. So that's something that we can do. I didn't yet tell you all the 4 things that we are doing in our lawsuit. First, the invalidity I mentioned. Second, we argue that their patents are unenforceable because you can't use a patent to gain a monopoly, and yet that's what they're doing. They're gaining substantial monopoly over major crops. So that's second group of arguments are surrounding that issue. The third group is around the infringement issue. It's common sense, and it's been common law for years, that if your bull jumps over into my pasture and impregnates my cows, that you owe me for the problems that's caused. That's trespass. And you got to keep your bull within your fence. They can't keep their product within their fence, and so they're using this wrinkle in patent law that was designed not for plants and biological material, but for objects, for mechanical inventions, to the strict liability standard, to pursue it, and they're doing it because they can chill anybody who comes after them or any of their growers for damages by simply coming back at that person with a patent infringement suit that costs more money than they would ever get for the damages. So that's why they want to keep it. In addition, finally, the fourth category is there is no injury. If their contamination comes over into an organic field or farm or biodynamic or non-transgenic of any kind, those farmers don't want it. And they want to get rid of it as quickly as they can. There's no loss to Monsanto from that contamination. We claim we shouldn't owe them any royalties. Right. And yet the claim now is that you have to pay the royalty, or you in possession of their gene without having paid the royalty, and they can sue you and take away your farm if that's what's necessary to get the money out of you. So that's where we are.
Monsanto, Monsanto, I had a bad dream. You poisoned the planet and patented the seed. Now the wind blowing pollen from my neighbor's field has got me in court while decreasing my yield. Signed, where's justice? Where's justice? Where's justice? You won't find it here. Not on this dead soil or that coin in your ear. They say justice is blind with a scale in her hand, but she just can't compete with old Uncle Sam. Signed, Obama, 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 I feel betrayed. You promised the people, but the power you gave to the masters of money, of greed and of war, to the chemical companies you bow down before. Sign the people. Dear people, it's almost too late. They're sealing your coffin and icing your fate. The time is at hand and the change is past due. The system is broken, now it's up to you.